Welcome to the Art of the Matter, a place where we delve into the stories behind great works of art. Today we're stepping into a room illuminated by a single star of light. A light that doesn't comfort, but exposes. It falls on a scene so visceral, so brutally intimate, that it feels less like a painting and more like a crime scene, frozen in time. We are looking at the violent grace of Caravaggio's Judith and Holofernes, painted in 1599. Let me describe what that unforgiving light actually reveals. In the center of the darkness, on a rumpled white sheet, lies the Assyrian general Holofernes. His body is contorted, his muscles are straining, his face a mask of pure agony, mouth wrenched open, in a silent scream you can almost hear. One hand claws at the air, the other grips the sheet in vain, and, leaning over him, is Judith, a young widow in simple cream-coloured blouse. Her brow is furrowed not in rage, but in fierce, focused determination. With one hand she grips his hair, and with the other she drives her sword deep into his throat. The blood arcs in a bright, horrific jet across the canvas. Behind her, an old maid watches, eyes closed, hands steady, holding a sack ready for the severed head. There's no hesitation, no horror, only grim resolve. This is not symbolism, it's physical, and even 4 centuries later, it has the power to shock. To understand this painting, we need to know the story behind it, and for this, we need to go to the Book of Judith in the Bible. The setup is classic. The mighty Assyrian army, led by General Holofernes, has besieged the Jewish city of Bethulia. Starving and desperate, the people are ready to surrender. Then appears Judith, a wealthy widow of great beauty and deep faith. She devises a plan. It's so bold it borders on madness. She dresses in her finest clothes, she adorns herself in jewels, and she walks directly into the enemy camp. She tells Holofernes she has fled Bethulia, bringing a prophecy of its fall. Captivated, he welcomes her, and for 4 days she visits his tents, winning his trust and biding her time. On the 4th night, he invites her to a feast. He drinks himself into oblivion, and he collapses into a deep sleep. As the passage reads, Judith stood weeping at his bedside and said, O Lord, God of Israel, give me strength. She took his sword, and from the bedpost she held him fast by the hair on his head, and struck his neck twice with all her might. And this is the moment that Caravaggio captures, the brutal instant between life and death. But note, the biblical text says she struck him twice. This isn't a clean, divine slice, it's a messy, human struggle. And Caravaggio, the master of reality, makes us feel every bit of that struggle. To understand why this painting feels so raw, so real, we need to understand the man behind the brush. Michelangelo Meriti da Caravaggio, born in 1571, was brilliant, volatile, and violent. He rejected the idealized beauty of the Renaissance. Instead of saints and marble gods, he painted real people, prostitutes, beggars, and drunks, with unflinching realism. His genius was matched only by his temper. Rome's police records are filled with his name. Brawls, libel, assaults. This wasn't just a bad temper. It was a fundamental part of his artistic vision. He believed truth was found in the gritty, often ugly reality of the streets, not in the polished marble ideals. He knew what the sound of a blade makes when it makes contact with the flesh. And he knew the look of violence and terror in a man's eyes when in a fight. And this first-hand knowledge bleeds into his art. So let's look again at Judith. Her arms are tense, and her face is set in grim disgust. This isn't triumph, it's reluctant necessity, the horror of doing what must be done. Caravaggio gives us a saint who is not ecstatic but nauseated. And this is the core of his violent grace. Salvation is raw, it's not pretty. Behind her, the old maid Abra isn't just a bystander. Her expression is one of the most chilling elements in this artwork. She doesn't flinch, she leans in, her face a wrinkled mask of grim determination. She's the practical accomplice, ready to bundle the head in her bag. This collective, almost workman-like approach to the miracle makes it all the more shocking, all the more real. And what's more, some historians believe that the screaming face of Holofernes may even be a self-portrait, a portrait of Caravaggio, that is. This fairy adds a profound layer of psychological complexity. Was Caravaggio, the perpetual sinner, also painted himself as the victim of divine retribution? It's as if he internally caught in his own violent drama. But why was this painting so explosive in 1599? Because it appeared at the height of the Counter-Reformation, a period where the Catholic Church, in response to the Protestant challenge, was fighting to reclaim its authority. To do this, the Catholic Church demanded that art be direct, emotionally powerful, and doctrinally clear. Art had then become a weapon of faith, and Caravaggio was its sharpest, most dangerous blade. But before we talk politics, let's talk about the paint. Caravaggio's technique was revolutionary. He invented a new visual language, tenebrism, from the Italian word tenebroso, meaning darkness. Think of this as dramatic illuminations with pronounced contrasts of light and dark. And when we look closely at his paintings, we can see that he painted light itself, cutting the figures out of shadow with blinding clarity. This technique is different from the general chiaroscuro, meaning light and shadow. Tenebrism is extreme. It's a violent and dramatic spotlight in an abyss of darkness. In Judith and Holofernes, a single invisible light source illuminates the horror. The white sheets, the pale flesh, the gleaming sword. Everything else is swallowed by black. This isn't just a stylistic choice, it's a theological one. The light acts as divine spotlight, judging the scene. It forces the eye to the nexus of the action. The blades soaring through the neck. We are not allowed to look away for the moment of this grace. Caravaggio also painted with radical realism. His models were not just idolized, they were real people with wrinkles, dirt under their fingernails, and scars. The blood in his painting doesn't trickle elegantly, it spurts in thick, viscous ropes, as it would from a severed, cauterized artery. The strain in Judith's forearms are anatomically perfect. This was art that looked like truth, so natural, some clerical critics accused him of vulgarity, of elevating the lowly and mundane over the sacred and ideal. In 1599 in Rome, this realism was dynamite. Judith's story served as a church message, a devout woman, armed by faith, slaying tyranny. But Caravaggio, true to form, subverts the simple propaganda. The church wanted the symbolism of virtue, slaying vice. Caravaggio gave them a real, complicated woman in the act of butchery. He presented the paradox head on. The act that is physically horrific is spiritually necessary. This is the violent grace. The idea that salvation can arrive not on a gentle breeze, but on the edge of a blood-stained sword. It's a grace that is traumatic, costly, and deeply unsettling. When we look at this painting, we must remember that Caravaggio himself lived in a world where death was public entertainment. Criminals were beheaded on bridges, duels fought in alleys, and he himself would flee Rome just a few years later, in 1606, after killing a man in a brawl over a tennis match. His own violence was real, not metaphorical, and that's why his Judith feels less like a myth and more like a report from the front lines of faith. He brought the divine down to earth, into taverns and tenements. His Judith may have been modelled on his mistress, Lena, a woman rumoured to be a prostitute. But by choosing this model, he dared to suggest that the holy heroine could have the face of a contemporary Roman woman, that grace could walk through the very people society deemed fallen. He didn't paint saints from heaven, he painted them from the streets of Rome. So we can say, with certainty, when we look at this painting, that Caravaggio did not give us a pious legend, but a beautiful human truth. Yet his legacy didn't end with him. His shadow and his light fell upon one of the most remarkable painters of the 17th century, Artemisia Gentileschi. To understand how her Judith slaying Holofernes compares to Caravaggio's, we must understand the woman behind the brush. Born in 1593, Artemisia was the daughter of a painter. She was denied access to the art academies, so she trained at home. Her father hired a tutor, Agostino Tassi, and in 1611, when Artemisia was 17, Tassi raped her. The ensuing trial was a public ordeal. She endured 7 months of humiliation and physical torture by thumbscrews to prove her truth. She never recanted, and he was convicted but never punished. This trauma didn't just inform her art, it forged in it a fire. When you look at Artemisia's Judith slaying Holofernes, painted just a few years later, you're seeing more than a biblical story. You are seeing her story. So let's make the comparison explicit. Caravaggio's Judith recoils. She's hesitant. Her arms are held at a distance, as if she wishes she wasn't there. Artemisia's Judith leans in. She's physically stronger, her sleeves are rolled up, her muscles are straining. She and her maid work perfectly, hand in hand, a powerful unison, pinning Holofernes down. They are not symbols, they are women doing what the hard work needs to be done. It's messy justice. The blood in Artemisia's version doesn't just spurt, it gushes, cascading over the sheets in torrents. For Artemisia, there was no mythic heroine. It was catharsis, truth, and survival. Her brushwork is vigorous, urgent, and tactile. Where Caravaggio sculpted the light, Artemisia painted with fury. She learned his visual language, tenebrism, then used it to write her own defiant story of female agency and collective power. So what is the final lesson of these two masterpieces? Caravaggio shattered the Renaissance steel, teaching us that the sacred is found in the real, and that grace can be violent, bloody, and a complicated affair. Artemisia in turn taught us that this new realism could be a tool for the marginalized, to tell their own stories, and to reclaim their own power and narrative. And from the Dutch master painter Gerrit van Honthorst to Rembrandt himself, Caravaggio's tenebrism became the heartbeat of the Baroque art movement. Faces emerging from darkness and moments frozen in light. So what do you see when you look at Judith and Holofernes? Caravaggio's conflicted heroine performing horrific duty, or Artemisia's determined avenger enacting a righteous justice? Perhaps the true violence grace is the one that allows us to hold both truths at once. To see in this story the terrifying cost of salvation and the fear power of the oppressed. Thank you for joining me. I'm Nicola, and this has been The Art of the Matter. Until next time, keep looking, keep creating, and remember, every masterpiece begins with a single, thoughtful brushstroke.